They call me a monster because the maze has walls. They do not ask who built them. They remember the hunger. I remember the door. My name is Asterion. You know me by the name they gave my shame. Minotaur, bull of Minos, beast of Crete, mouth in the dark, tax on Athens, error hidden beneath a palace. But I am not born from my own crime. I am born from a king's bargain, a god's anger, a queen's humiliation, and an architect's obedience. Then they put me underground and acted surprised when I became a thing of echoes. They say Minos asks Poseidon for a sign. A bull rises from the sea, white with divine salt, magnificent enough to prove a throne. Minos promises sacrifice. Minos keeps the bull instead. That is where the story begins, if kings are allowed to begin stories. Poseidon is offended. Pasiphae is cursed. Desire is made into punishment. The queen is turned into the instrument of a god's insult. And from that insult I arrive. They name me Asterion, starry, remember that. Before I am called beast, I am given a name that belongs to the sky. I am not born in the labyrinth. I am carried there. A child does not ask what bargain preceded his body. A child does not choose the horns, the hooves, the breath, the appetite, the sound his own throat makes in the night. A child only reaches. No one writes that part. They prefer the moment when I become useful. They wrote that I am the horror at the center of the maze. What I remember is this: the maze is the horror, and I am what it teaches itself to blame. Daedalus builds it, clever Daedalus, brilliant Daedalus, the man whose mind can fold stone into confusion. He gives the palace a secret stomach. Corridors curve back into themselves. Doors refuse to stay doors. Every passage promises exit and then becomes another question. They call it genius. That is another trick of power. When cruelty is complicated enough, people admire the engineering. Minos does not kill me. That would be too honest. He hides me. I become the family secret with horns. The proof under the floor, the consequence breathing beneath the feasts. Above me the palace shines. Below I learn the grammar of footsteps. Do you know what silence becomes when it has nowhere to go? It becomes a second body. I wear it. The labyrinth speaks in drips, scrapes, hoof strikes, breath returning from stone. Sometimes I hear music from above. Sometimes I hear laughter. Sometimes I hear the sea, or I imagine I do. I do not know which is worse, memory or invention. They feed me tribute. 7 youths, 7 maidens. Athens pays for the death of Androgeos, and I become the invoice. Do not mistake me. I do not make this arrangement. I do not sit at council. I do not demand ships. I do not write laws. I am not invited when men decide which children must die so other men can remain proud. But they come to me, terrified, perfumed, praying, young. And hunger is not philosophy. This is the part where you want me to say I refuse, that I starve nobly in the dark and prove myself innocent by dying slowly. That would be convenient for you. But the body is not a courtroom. The body wants to live even when living has been made obscene. So yes, I eat. And each time I become easier to condemn. That is the elegance of the labyrinth. It turns survival into evidence against the survivor. Then Theseus comes. He enters with a sword and a story already waiting to crown him. Ariadne gives him the thread. Remember her, not as decoration, not as a lovesick girl at the margin of a hero's adventure. She understands the maze better than the men who boast of conquering it. She knows no one escapes intelligence built to serve a king unless someone inside the king's house betrays the design. The thread is not romance. The thread is sabotage. Theseus follows it in. The floor knows his weight. The air changes. He smells of daylight and decision. They say he kills me with a sword. Some show him with a spear. Weapons vary when the victim cannot testify. But I am testifying now. He finds me at the center. There is no throne, no pile of bones arranged like trophies, no roaring chamber where evil waits in theatrical lighting. There is only a body shaped by punishment, a mind trained by walls, and a stranger sent to become famous. He looks at me, and for one breath, I think he sees me. Not the beast, not the debt, not the proof of Athenian courage. Me, Asterion. Then the blade moves. Afterward, everyone escapes except the dead. Theseus leaves with the thread. Ariadne leaves and is abandoned in another story because even helpers become disposable once the hero has used the exit. Minos keeps his palace until other ruin finds him. Daedalus flies. The poets continue. And I become simple. That is what death does when handed to storytellers who prefer clean symbols. I become the monster in the maze, the appetite at the center, the brute thing civilization must overcome. No one says, here is what happens when kings hide consequences instead of facing them. No one says, here is what happens when architecture obeys shame. No one says, here is a child named Starry, locked beneath a palace because his body made powerful people uncomfortable. A labyrinth is not just a place, it is a system that makes guilt difficult to locate. Every corridor says, not here. Every turn says, farther in. Every wall says, someone else. By the time you reach the center, you are grateful for a monster. A monster gives you somewhere to put the blame. I do not ask you to call me innocent. Innocence is a word people love because it sorts the world quickly. Clean, unclean, victim, beast, hero, sacrifice. I am tired of clean words. I have blood in my story. I have fear in my mouth. I have names I never learned and faces I remember anyway. I am not harmless, but harm and origin are not the same thing. That is the sentence they bury under the palace. I am what happens when power refuses to look at its own creation. I am what happens when a king breaks a promise to a god, when a god punishes through a woman, when a woman bears the punishment, when an architect makes a prison beautiful enough to be admired, and when a city sends children into the dark so politics can call itself justice. If you need a monster, I am available. I have been available for centuries, but if you came here for the truth, follow the thread backward, past the sword, past the hunger, past the maze, past the king, past the god. There is the first crime, not in my teeth, in the promise. You think the labyrinth is difficult because it is confusing. No, the labyrinth is difficult because it is honest. It shows you how far people will walk to avoid saying what they already know. I am at the center because someone must be. Every house has a center. Every kingdom has a center. Every family has one locked room where the truth is fed just enough to keep breathing. You call me Minotaur, I answer, because names are sometimes the only food the dead are given. But before that, I am Asterion, starry, a thing born under a name too beautiful for the place they put me. They wrote that Theseus found the monster at the center of the maze. What I remember is this: the monster was never alone.